G'day and welcome to the part 3 of the Mandalorian diorama build. Today we're going to do the painting, or the basic painting of the stuff we rendered yesterday, and put the heads on the pikes. So here's the spray cans. Please make sure that all of your spray cans are working, because this one doesn't and I have to change the other one. Another tip is, if you're trying to video with your phone, before you start, make sure that you've zoomed out so that you can actually see what's going on. My apologies for the fact that you can't hear. It'll do a little bit of, figure that out after a while, and away we go. Basic spray can, usual method, just spray so that you overlap where your spray edge goes, so you don't end up with lines and streaks. It looks like I've got lines because of the sunshine here, but in actual fact when you see it done, there isn't. So just careful. So I did the black, and then I did white on the front side of the wall and the buildings and the downpipes, so that I could use it as a base coat for the painting that we're going to do in the next bit. So that's that bit, and 2 sets done, and then away we go. So here's the white building. So I have some paint that was left over from a previous project that, according to the pictures that I've got of the Mandalorian, was close enough to the right colour. This paint had also had some texture thing added to it to make like a technical paint, to give it a bit of grit, for the build that we were doing previously, my son and I. And so this paint does have a little bit of texture, which only added, in this particular instance, to the finish that we're trying to get over the top of the stucco. It is the reason why you'll see a little bit later that I paint the top so much. I go over the top quite a few times. That was trying to clear off the majority of the grit, so that it wasn't as gritty as the bottom, because I noticed in the photographs that the top does look a lot smoother than the bottom, or the section below the engaged line does in all of the pictures that I could find. So just checking, making sure the edges that are part of the diorama as opposed to part of the outside edge are painted. I didn't do the ends, I left them black because I figured that sort of defines where the edge of the thing is, but the top of the wall I sort of want more to be part of the actual diorama. Just working on the second one now. Again, it's always really difficult to know how much to put in and how much not. I would certainly value feedback from anybody that feels like putting feedback in. And so this is the second one, again doing that top line, making a mistake, getting that top thing done. Really working to get the top bit smooth, whereas the bottom bit's quite chunky from the render. And then the bottom edge. Now, I didn't do where the building's going to sit. I tried to go around the pencil line a bit, and I didn't get right to the back edge, primarily because when it gets glued down and screwed down, if there's paint there, the glue's not sticking to the substrate, to the MDF, it's sticking to the paint, and if you have the paint come a cropper, your glue comes away with it. Not a biggie, but because again, I think that between the screws and the glue, it'll be a little bit overkill, but I do want these things to travel if they've got to travel. The one that I'll keep won't travel so much, but the other one, I don't know where Aussie Sci-Fi might end up taking it. I'm hoping it's a lovely thing for him. So there you go, it's one base, and then same thing again, because this is going to have sand on it, I tried to just get the grit a bit more even across it. Then the second base, same story. Trying not to paint over the black, working out from the inside out over the edge when I get near an edge, so that I don't get too much paint around onto that black bit that I've already painted. Now I put some brown, a darker brown, into the mix that we had, and this is a sort of a dry brush, getting reference from the pictures that I've managed to track down of the scene that I'm recreating from episode 5 of season 1, and just dabbing it on in places, trying to look at the pictures and figure out where the marks are. I intend to also do a wash over this to try and really highlight those stucco-y rendery bits, and then a dry brush of a very light cream or whitey sort of a cream to just pick out the edges after I've washed the face of the surface. For today's video it was just the painting bit, so here you go, that's with the dark on it. It does get a little bit darker as it dries, so there's a pretty good contrast when it's done. And then that's the building, so you can see the stuccos, it looks stucco-y, and that's the brown that's on that. In the reference material, the line, the dark is not that dark, it's pretty subtle, so I did go for a fairly subtle thing. I'm going to pick it up with the washes. After the painting of today, of this section, it was still wet, and I didn't want to try doing any washes on the wetter paint, because if I have to dab them or anything, I didn't want it to be taking off the paint from what I'd put on. So there's some stills. The next thing was to start sharpening sticks. So it's just hobby knife with some skewers that I got from art supplies store. I've made them sharp because they're sharp, but I tried still to make them not so that they necessarily will punch a hole in myself if I'm trying to handle them or brush them past the model or anything. So, you know, it needs to look the part, but we'll try and be a bit safe. After the sharpening was finished, the next thing to do is to establish the height of the sticks, and I didn't want to. The height is almost the length that they are as they come, but I decided after I measured them up against the trooper and then had a look at the reference material and then checked them against the pencil topper that I'd already made and all of that sort of thing, to not exceed the height of the wall on the model, because if it has to be stacked or packed or travelled or anything, if the skewers stick taller than the wall, then it either has to be packed on top or they take the weight of whatever's on top of them, and that could be disastrous if they snap or bend in transport. So it's a practical thing. If you're building it to be a static model at home, you might want to leave the length a little bit longer just to make it a bit more authentic, but I've gone for a compromise with, I think it'll still look cool, but we're not ridiculous. So in the photographs there's one helmet that seems to be further than a pike, and its pike seems to be shorter. So it's one of the ones that's got some damage out of it. So the first thing to do was to hold the helmet on the right angle for the photograph, and then drill up through, trying to keep it at the angle pointing up. It was a combination of tilted on its side and back a little bit. So I'm working in pairs for all of these because there's two. I wanted everything to look the same when I finally do it. So it's just a matter of gluing them to the pike, regular super glue, and then gluing their little flags on the bottom of them. There's a more detailed video of that in the pencil topless one, so if you want to see more of how that was done a little bit slower, again for time, I'm aware of how long the time takes, so I'm trying not to go too far. At this point in time, I'd like to give a big shout out to Len and Jeffrey and Paul, who I spoke to the other day. Thanks, Blakes, for watching. Now, Jeff, you're famous, even if you don't get a video up for yourself. Anybody that watches this around the world's going to know about Jeffrey and Lenny and Paul. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you as friends, and enjoy the rest of the video. Okay, that was just a bit of fun for me, and I hope you Blakes getting a bit of a chuckle. Here it's just a matter of, you know, everyone doing each pair, working out how tall they're going to be, putting them together, checking them out against the reference material. I did notice in the reference material that one of the helmets appears to be facing sideways, which I hadn't noticed until I started doing the glue today. So there's one of them where the helmet is actually sideways but the flag is still forward. So if you're going to make it, just keep an idea of what's going on. As I got through and had done more and more of them, I started to check across the reference material and cross them off, the ones that I'd done, so that I could remember where I'm up to and what heights they were. There are two that appear to be shorter down than the others, but other than that, there's some that don't appear to have any damage. They've just got a pike through them. So it was a combination of, let's get the look right. I want it to look terrific as a nice model. I'm probably not going to end up with a movie set quality, but it's not, when you're doing something, don't half-hearted at it. You may as well, you're going to all the trouble. There's a lot of hours so far to get to here, and a lot of preparation in the months previously to starting this. So I would encourage you, to spend the time and be happy with the thing that you do, and take the time to do it always. So this is the third of the first lot. So these were all the helmets that actually had damage done to them. So they're the ones that had the cuts taken out of them and all of the stuff that I demonstrated in the pencil toppers video. And then I'll separate these off. We go into a fast forward for the next lot until I get to the last one. And the last one, watching back through the episode, just as Mando leaves, he actually walks between the power posts. So it's not in the majority of the stills that are available from the trailer and the promo material and things. You don't see that last pole. I don't know. Disney would know. Somebody at the production would know exactly how many posts there were in the ground. The artwork that's at the end of the episode shows them in very, very neat rows, but the angle of the film in the episode doesn't let me see whether it's the row or not, whether they're in really neat rows or not. They look a little bit more haphazard. If they were in rows, I suspect that there could be 9 of them or a dozen. But from all of the angles that I was able to check, I could only count a maximum of 8 in the frame at any given point in time. And in actual fact, that last one that makes the 8th one only appears as Mando's leaving the scene, and he obscures a bunch of others. So it was quite tricky to try and work out just how many. I'm going to go with 8. Upon doing the 8th one, I realised that I didn't have enough helmets. So, as a bit of a treat, I'll just stick it on the end of this after we've finished putting all the heads on the pikes and having an equal set of 8 heads on pikes at different sizes and different angles and the right angles and all of that sort of thing. Then I've got just me casting another couple of heads. I use a 2-part resin. It's called CraftCast. I get it through a distributor called ALDAX in Australia. So if you're in Australia, ALDAX is in Sydney. They do mail order. Adam there is a really nice guy and super knowledgeable. I get all of my silicon moulds, the moulding material from him, and all of my casting material from him. They've got pigments, all sorts of stuff, a lot of good demo things. So I encourage you, if you're going to do this in any sort of way, to give ALDAX a look. I find their prices to be really, really good, and their products are excellent. I'm not related to anybody at ALDAX. I just like using them, and I'm glad I found them a couple of years ago when I started getting into this hobby. Alright, so final head on, then separate them into 2 groups. Here's a couple of stills coming up for when I did separate them. So there you go. 2 groups of identical-ish heads on pikes and pencil topper, and they'll be ready to go when we do it. This is the silicone mould that I've got that I made from the Stormtrooper helmets that I pulled off, and I just made a silicone cast and then I use it's an equal part 2-component mix. If you've got coffee spoons, always hang on to your spoons. They're great for doing this sort of thing, and if they get buggered up, who cares? Pour the thing, always made up too much resin, so here's some, and just another mould that I had spare. So there's a couple of, these are D&D little holders, and a couple of bases. So there you go. As always, if you've enjoyed this, you might enjoy my artwork on Redbubble. Feel free to buy anything that takes your fancy. I get a kick out of it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next video, which I'm not sure what it is yet because I haven't filmed anything more. Alright, have a great day, and thank you very much. Bye.